Now, what would you do if someone handed you a box and inside that box were Adolf Hitler's teeth? Well, this really happened to a language interpreter called Elena. She was just 25 years old, fluent in Russian and German, and suddenly she was caught in a top secret life or death mission. See, the Russians had found Hitler's teeth, but they needed proof and forced Elena to interpret while they interrogated none other than Hitler's dentist. On the spot, no mistakes, no second chances.
You have 4 seconds to prepare what you're trying to say.
To survive this, she needed incredible skill and nerves of steel. But actually, this is the same mental superpower conference interpreters use to this day.
It's a bit challenging because you're not a machine. And this is what a lot of people think, that interpreters are machines, basically.
My name is Olly Richards. I'm a linguist and a language teacher. I've taught hundreds of thousands of people a new language and published dozens of language learning books. So I was very excited to meet 3 real interpreters, Barry, Martin, and Andrea, and share their secrets with you. You will learn how interpreters do the impossible, what actually happens inside their extraordinary brains, and how you can train these same language superpowers for yourself. But first, let's go back to 1945, where Elena ends up hiding the most famous teeth in history. Elena loved poetry. She studied literature and German in school. So when she volunteered for the Red Army, she probably imagined she'd be doing something about admin, maybe some translation. Instead, she literally ended up guarding a box of Adolf Hitler's teeth.
On May 8th, my superior officer, Major Gorbushin, told me to go and see him. He gave me a burgundy-colored box and said, "Those are Hitler's teeth. You're responsible for them."
It happened in May 1945, just after Hitler died. Soviet soldiers found a burned body near his bunkers. No face, no fingerprints, just a few teeth. If this was really Hitler, it would solve World War II's biggest mystery and prove that the war was over. But they had to be sure, so they gave the teeth to their trusted interpreter, Elena, in a cigarette box. Horrible teeth they were. Heaven help her if she lost them or told anyone, ever. Terrifying, right? Just imagine that. It's not just a big job. It's the kind of responsibility that makes your bones shake. But that wasn't even the hard part.
The following morning, Elena and the 2 officers set off to track down Hitler's dentist. Maybe he could say for certain if these were Hitler's teeth. But they knew neither the dentist's name nor his address, or even if he was still alive. Finally, they found out his name and that he had left the city 2 weeks earlier. But they also learned that his assistant had stayed in Berlin, hoping for her soldier husband to return from the front.
So they made Elena track down the poor dental assistant, interrogate her in German, and translate everything that she said. See, it was all very, very hush-hush. Just one terrified witness, a room full of men with guns, and Elena, the only one who could understand everyone. The dentist, the witnesses, the soldiers. Perhaps she tried something like this.
There's also this strategy that, at least in Slovakia, we call something like bridging. It means that you speak simultaneously with the speaker, then you omit sentence, and you connect the next sentence with the previous one without people noticing that you omitted the sentence. So this would be, for example, a risky strategy. I would say it's a high-risk strategy, but still it makes you sound fluent.
The stakes? Well, let's just say only 2 civilians knew the truth, and one of them was sent to the Gulag. You know those horrible labor camps? Yeah. Well, let's be honest, if this were you or me, we'd have that story on TikTok by bedtime, or maybe even live streaming it to the US Embassy. But Elena, well, she was sworn to secrecy by Stalin himself.
Elena, as the interpreter, was warned she would be held responsible in the case of a translation error. Everyone was given strict instructions and put under real pressure.
And if you know your history, Stalin did not want anyone to know that Hitler was dead, and even pretended to keep hunting for him. Now, in case it isn't obvious, Elena's interpreting story shows us something incredible. Under the highest stress imaginable, she didn't panic, she didn't freeze, she just translated, and she got it right. The best part is, our 3 elite interpreters are going to tell us exactly how they do this. But before we dive in, here's something that can seriously help you listen like an interpreter. Because if you're learning Spanish, Japanese, German, or even trying to copy a regional accent, you can't just memorize phrases. You have to train your ear the way that real interpreters do, not with slow recordings, not with written transcripts, but by listening to the messy, natural rhythm of how people actually speak. Fast, emotional, full of slang, interruptions, mumbles. That's the kind of speech that interpreters deal with every day. And one of the best ways to train for that is, of course, TV, movies, local news, talk shows, reality TV, even the ridiculous ones, all packed with the unpredictable real-life speech patterns your brain needs to hear. But here's the catch. Most of those shows are geo-blocked, so unless you're actually in that country, you can't watch them, which is exactly why I use NordVPN, who are very kindly sponsoring this video. Now, NordVPN lets you switch your virtual location with one click, so you can unlock content from over 118 countries. Suddenly you're not stuck with whatever your local Netflix offers. You can jump to Argentina and right into an Argentine telenovela. You can watch a German courtroom drama.
Wie sieht's mit Las Vegas aus? Haben Sie danach auch irgendwo gesucht?
Catch the actual Japanese game shows that everyone's always talking about. And yes, it works on your phone, your laptop, your tablet, even your smart TV. Plus, Nord keeps your data safe on public Wi-Fi, which is pretty important if, like me, you are watching things on the go. I've been using Nord for years, and if you're really trying to train your ear for languages like Elena had to, it might be the most useful tool you could add to your language journey. So if you want to give it a try, head to nordvpn.com/Olly Richards and unlock a world of native content that you've been missing. They've got a great offer for our viewers right now, 4 extra months free on a 2-year plan, plus a 30-day money-back guarantee, totally risk-free. So that's nordvpn.com/Olly Richards, or there is a link in the description that you can click, which you know how to do. Now, you may be wondering, Olly, do interpreters do anything special when they learn languages, anything out of the ordinary? What are their special secrets? Well, it turns out, yes, they do. It's all about going deeper beyond just words and grammar, because interpreting isn't just about being accurate. It's about making sure the listener fully understands and receives your message. And this means you can't just repeat what someone said word for word. No, because that might not make any sense at all in the other language. So interpreters learn to think in meanings, not words. And this means understanding culture and even how people do things.
What did I do when I was acquiring Russian all the way back? I lived with a host family. They're like, oh, we've got to go pay the electric bill. I'm like, I'll do it. Why? I wanted to see how Russians paid for their electricity. And so I was able to look, and I would look at the bill, and I'd be studying the bill as I was waiting in line. And so those are the things you have to do, right? You've really got to immerse yourself in the language and the culture.
Let's think about this for a sec. Say you're listening to someone speak another language and you're trying to catch the meaning of what they're saying. It's not always that simple, because different languages use different word order in their sentences. For example, in English, we say, I bought a pretzel, but in German, it might come out as, I have a pretzel bought. You see what I mean? So it's like you'd have to hear the whole sentence first before you can start interpreting it. Or do you? Maybe there's some other trick up their sleeve. By the way, if you're enjoying this, I've created a special resource for you, which is a collection of all of these special interpreter language learning tips and techniques from this video, plus a few extra insider tips from Barry, Martin, and Andrea, all together in one place. I found these kind of techniques to be a real game changer in my own language learning. I think you can benefit from them too. It's all completely free. You'll find it inside the Story Learning Fluency Blueprint. You can scan the QR code on the screen, or you could grab the link in the description. Definitely check that out. Now, as for Elena and our interpreter crew, if you think being fluent in 2 languages makes interpreting easy, just wait. This is the calm before the storm.
And they have to reply in a full sentence, for example, to find a reason. And while they answer your question, you give them another question. So they have to listen to another question while finishing the answer of the previous one. And you have, like, for example, 50 questions, and they have to react quickly, always finishing sentence, listening to another question, then finishing that sentence. And this is the thing when they get really tired.
Now, if all Elena had to do was speak German like a native, then interpreting for Stalin wouldn't be such a big deal. But that's not what interpreting is, not even close. Interpreting means listening and speaking at the same time. If you've ever witnessed a professional interpreter in action, you'll know you've seen something amazing. They do something the rest of us don't. They listen to a message in one language and they say it out loud in another language while still listening for the next sentence in the first language. It's a magic trick, really. But there are so many layers to this and so many ways that you can mess it up.
For me, it was just fascinating when you would have someone who would say something and it's ambiguous, and yet you know that they're specifically referring to something but not being said. And everybody in the room that's listening to them in the original gets it. Now, as an interpreter, you have to get it as well, but you can't make the implicit explicit. You have to take that, understand, it's like, I know what he's talking about, but he's being really vague. So I've got to be equally vague when I put it into the other language. Otherwise, that could be misconstrued or I could get into trouble.
It's a mean little word trap. And as if that's not hard enough, they've got to do all this live and in front of very important people. So it means staying calm under intense pressure. And that's scary. I mean, I still remember the first time that I had a job in Paris and I had to speak French to real customers in the youth hostel, answer the phone. I mean, I was absolutely terrified and I was just kind of booking youth hostel rooms. Imagine doing this under this kind of pressure. Now, I'm sure you must have seen some kind of interpreting on TV before. Maybe you know there's more than one way to do it.
You have consecutive, which is the person speaks, then stops, then the interpreter interprets. And then you have trained interpreters who are trained in what we call long consecutive with notes, where they are able to listen to a message, analyze it for meaning, use their own customized note-taking system to jot down those ideas, and then be able to give that back consecutively in chunks of anywhere from, say, 2 minutes to 10. It's a very advanced skill and one that almost appears superhuman when you see people do it.
I don't care which one you're talking about. It's one of the hardest things you can ask a human brain to do. Elena actually wrote later that it felt like her brain had split in two, one half doing the job, the other watching from the outside. But she wasn't supposed to be writing. And when scientists scan interpreters' brains, they see something incredible. The parts of the brain used for working memory, impulse control, and attention switching all light up like a firework display. Because it's not just juggling two languages, it's choosing the right one, blocking out the wrong one, and switching between them on the fly. Lightning fast and extremely sophisticated, way beyond just language. Like the brain has shifted into a superhuman gear. Even more exciting though, there's no single interpreter part of the brain that does all this. It's multiple brain areas all pitching in. It's complete drama. That's why even the world's smartest computers still cannot interpret in real time and stay accurate. And get this, unlike normal bilinguals, interpreters don't just translate word for word.
They are processing first and foremost for meaning. They have to understand the meaning. And then, the words are just the vehicle for the meaning and the idea.
In other words, they have to listen for the actual message, predict what's coming next, and remix the sentences all in real time.
If there's something that is really unknown, I'll have it printed out in front of me, highlighted, whatever. So trying to look up any kind of materials related to the topic. I mean, ideally, the client gives you something.
As for Elena back in that bunker in Berlin, she didn't get any notes to use, but somehow standing there holding Hitler's teeth, she did everything modern interpreters are trained to do. Think in meaning and the overall message, not words. Understand the culture, listen and speak at the same time in two languages. And if Elena could do it, could you? You might think that interpreting is all about talent, like you're born with some kind of split-brain superpower, and I wouldn't blame you for thinking that, but every pro that I know says the opposite. You train for it. You mess it up 100 times, and eventually your brain catches on. Now, I'm no interpreter, but I remember this very clearly from my own life when I learned Spanish and then later learned Portuguese. I found that having learned both those languages, I would mix them up terribly. So I actually had to go through a process of learning to switch between them so that I could talk with my Spanish friends and my Brazilian friends at the same time without getting completely confused. And that was with two very similar languages. These guys who do this professionally are incredible. And if you're learning a language, there are some cool things you can try at home. So listen carefully. Don't worry about writing these down, by the way. All these techniques, they're inside the special interpreter's tips guide that I told you about earlier. Link in the description.
I believe, year 3, I think we started looking at simultaneous interpreting. So we started with shadowing. We did that for quite a while. Shadowing is where you listen to someone speak and repeat what they say out loud as they say it. So you're not aiming for perfect understanding, you're just copying the sounds, the rhythm, the natural flow of real speech.
El hombre se llama
Miguel.
A Miguel le gusta mucho el agua.
El agua.
Ever tried this? It's amazing for pronunciation and it gets your brain used to real-time listening because you're echoing the actual sounds that they're making rather than perfect words. If you want to give it a go, it's not too hard. Just pick a short video, play it out loud and copy what you hear as it's happening. Once you've got the hang of that, try waiting just a second or two before you repeat the words. Now, I won't lie, it'll feel weird at first, like you're always playing catch up, but that awkward little gap is where the magic happens, because now your brain has to hold on to the meaning while still listening to what's coming next. It's like juggling 3 flaming batons. But if you train it even just a little, you'll start thinking faster, remembering more, and understanding language in real time. And it works really well with the next thing.
We would have all sorts of exercises. For example, you would have like simultaneous paraphrasing. It means that I read a text in English and they're supposed to repeat the same text, but using different words. So they have to convey the same idea in the same language, but use different words. So they have to work with the text and word in their head before they start speaking.
Paraphrasing is genius. You hear a sentence and then say it in your own way, same meaning, different words. For example, you might hear, a giraffe can consume up to 75 pounds of acacia leaves every day. That's my weird example of the week. And you say, a giraffe can eat a huge amount of leaves every day. And then they're not identical, but it means the same thing, and it gets you thinking in the language instead of just translating word for word.
And then we got into paraphrasing. So it was still in the same language, but saying ideas in a different way, which was quite challenging, because I think it's actually more challenging than interpreting, because you have to think about, okay, I cannot say it this way. I have to say it another way, you know?
And this is incredibly helpful when you're practicing speaking, because you won't always know the exact words you need, but you can work around this by describing it with words that you do know. You might already know about this next one.
Or for example, I start the sentence in English and they are supposed to finish it in Slovak. Then I start the sentence in Slovak, they're supposed to finish it in English.
Code switching is when you switch between 2 languages even in the middle of a sentence.
Es que se me olvidó llegar a la marqueta, so I have to go back now.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Half of the world has this skill down already. Don't knock it if it works.
The most suitable, the one I like the most would be anticipation, which means that you start and you anticipate how the sentence is going to finish.
Anticipation, that's a real superpower. Kind of like those annoying couples who do this.
We both grew up one block away from each other on the Lower East Side.
On Delancey Street.
Yeah, you start guessing where the sentence is going even before it finishes. Now, it sounds silly, but it builds real fluency in a new language, and especially helps you to start speaking faster. You're coaching your brain to quickly figure out the gist of what someone is saying. Here's an idea. Maybe try next time you're watching a show with subtitles, something like a comedy series where you know the characters well. By the way, I've got a great list of TV shows that you should watch for learning different languages. I'll put that in the description. Or just practice on your family.
Don't throw the baby out
Of the window.
Just wait till your father gets
A pack of diamonds.
Yeah, kids, they're not so good at prediction. And of course, the goal isn't perfection, it's to train your brain to stay calm while you're doing everything at once, listening, thinking, speaking.
And another thing is, for example, splitting your attention. So you have to do 2 things at once. And we can train this also with our students. For example, I read one text in the Slovak language. They read simultaneously with me completely different text in English language. Then I ask them, what did I read about? And now you tell me, what did you read about? So they have to be able to listen and concentrate on 2 things and remember.
I absolutely love that. And I'm going to try it tonight. Now, this is fun. I heard of one interpreter who practices by doing crossword puzzles in one language while listening to another language in their headphones. It's pretty crazy. You can see how it can make your brain nice and sharp. Now, here's the part of the story I didn't tell you. Elena didn't get a medal for helping solve the biggest mystery of World War II. She got silence. It was that or the labor camp. So she shut her mouth, not for 5 years, not 10. She kept the secret for 40 years until the Soviet Union collapsed. And at last, she published her memoir, spilling all the secrets still hiding in her razor-sharp brain. And if you've made it this far into the video, well, your brain will already be sharper than when you started. All that is left for now is for you to pick out a language to learn. But figuring out which language is right for you can be rather tricky. But that's exactly why you should watch my next video. It's all about choosing the perfect language based on what you already know. And it's full of surprises, like who knew that Arabic and Swahili were so similar? Watch this video and find out why.